Thanks for joining us today to discuss life and godliness with Rick and Angela Carter. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, email us at carters4hope@gmail.com. That's Carters, the number 4, hope@gmail.com. Any questions you have, we'll discuss in future episodes. Right now, sit back and let's join in on the conversation. Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be here. I think we're a little close. Are we a little close?
I don't know. There we go.
Anyway.
Technical difficulties.
Always something. And it is coming up on Memorial Day weekend. Yeah. Angela put her little Americana decor up. And
yep, that's it.
That's it. It's the extent.
That's the extent of my decorating.
Not a lot of decorating room in a fifth wheel. But anyway, we have been out in Frederick, Colorado. Man, where are we at? We're in Frederick, Colorado, and we have been doing a Hope Conference this week. We've had a crazy busy week with Hope Conference. Good response. I think there were 6 or so different churches here this week, and just a really good time. A lot of teaching.
It was really neat that one church actually brought their whole church over last night for the last night of it. So pretty cool.
So it was excellent. We had a great time here with the Cockrells, and we've supported the Cockrells. When I was pastoring at Beth Haven, we started a church out in the Panhandle of Texas, and then a few years ago, the Lord brought them up here. And we came 3 years ago, and we have commented just how much growth we see in the church from 3 years ago till now. Just a great spirit in the church. Good. Anyway, Brother Cockrell is the first person to suggest a topic, and so we're going to do the topic today that Brother Cockrell suggests. Oh, he's fixing my hair. Yeah. My makeup artist didn't do a good job today. He asked if we would talk about the topic of
dealing with your problems.
Dealing with problems. I don't know if I can talk much about this, having never had any problems.
Oh, never. No problems.
My life has been perfect. I did have a hangnail once.
I can talk about how to deal with them in the wrong way. I can do a couple of hours of that.
Yes, that's the one thing we could do, for sure. This is why we're able to do these podcasts.
Because we've messed it up so bad.
We've made so many mistakes. So if you're in the process of making mistakes, welcome to Life and Godliness. That's how you learn, That sometimes we get discouraged because we feel like we're the only ones that are messing everything up, and everyone else seems to have it all down. Everyone else seems to have figured it all out, and here we are just, trying to pretend like we know what we're doing. And
I figured out that I don't know anything.
Yeah, I think, though, that you've got to accept that that's part of the human condition, where you're gonna have problems. I think there's a lot of people that think that having problems means God's judging them.
Yeah. I mean, that's their natural tendency to think that way.
Yeah, like somehow they've done something they're not even aware of, and they're now being judged by God because they have a problem. And that's not the case. You got to get through that type of thinking. I've experienced that type of thinking in my own life. I know that's and just in talking to people, a lot of people do have that sense or that feeling that somehow they're being judged because they are going through problems. I'm not saying God never chastens his children. He certainly does chasten us. Chastening and testing aren't the same. And God allows us to go through problems to test us, to prove us. Have we learned what he tried to teach us the last time, or what he's been working on in our life? And not every trauma, tragedy, trouble is a judgment from God. Sometimes it's just the consequences of sin in the world, not necessarily our sin.
Sometimes it's just life.
Sometimes it's just life. That's what I mean. It's just what's in the world. And getting through that sense that everything is a demonic attack, everything is judgment from God.
You mean there's not a demon behind every teapot?
Well, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing not. And that's the thing, though. I mean, it is like literally, that's what you hear people talk about, is either it's judgment from God or it's demonic attack.
Yeah.
And are both of those things real? Yes. 100%. Yes, absolutely. But not every trouble I go through is that. And you get yourself, I think, messed up, twisted up when that's the total focus of your mind, is that it's somehow that all 100% of the time.
Right. No, I agree.
It overwhelms the mind.
Right.
And so just accepting that troubles are what troubles are. Sometimes they're tests. Sometimes they are chastisement. Every day we ought to be evaluating, am I walking with the Lord? Am I Am I seeking his face? Am I obedient? If there's sin in my life, am I getting rid of it? Not just when we're going through a problem. And if we're doing that, then when we go through a problem, there's no reason to assume that it's somehow judgment in that sense.
Right.
So, and if it is spiritual attack, well, greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world. You just keep doing what you're supposed to do. You just keep doing the right things, the biblical things. There's nothing else to do in that sense, as far as you just persevere. You continue on. And Angela's favorite statement is, keep on keeping on. Is that the one?
Oh yeah, it's my favorite.
Anyway,
it's a long story behind that, but
she doesn't really care for commonly used
now
tropes.
I don't care for that statement even more.
Anyway, so
yeah,
but we are to continue. We are to continue. Persevere. We used to have a preacher friend, old timey preacher friend, Brother Bill Brewer, who he always said, stick in the buggy. Stick in the buggy. And, you just keep moving forward. Stop focusing so much on why and start just dealing with the what. What am I supposed to do? And just do the what and let God take care of all the whys. I don't have to answer. I don't have to know all the whys. But when I'm going through troubles or when I have things that I need to deal with, and I think that's the context of the topic today a little more distinctly.
Right.
How do I know when to deal with things and when to leave things alone? And that's a hard thing to deal with, to know.
Yes.
And so let's break it down on multiple levels. First, on the personal level. When there's an issue in my life that's causing me personal angst, right? How do I ignore it? Do I deal with it? That's kind of the context here. Do I just ignore it and go on, or do I deal with it? Well, let's distinguish between my internal spiritual personal response and my external response to other individuals.
Okay.
So on a personal level, if I'm experiencing angst, there's going to be a couple reasons why. I have been offended and I have unforgiveness in my heart about this situation, and I'm struggling to resolve that, emotional side of it. Well, should I deal with that immediately or should I ignore it?
You probably shouldn't ignore it. Ignoring things probably aren't a good thing.
But
although that's what I tend to do.
Right, but that's my point. There's a lot of people that ignore that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm just going to put it behind me.
Because you just want to get over it.
I'm just
you
moving on.
Yeah.
I'm just, but I'm not dealing with it. I'm just moving. I'm just going to try and not think about it. I'm going to move on.
Right.
And that's not the way to deal with that. The way to deal with that is biblical forgiveness, right? Accepting that Christ's sacrifice was sufficient for that offense and counting the cross as taking care of that problem in my own emotional state.
That doesn't mean my emotions are going to instantly cave into that.
But it's a faith choice.
Yes.
And my feelings will eventually follow my faithful decisions, right? If I make a decision, put it at the cross, and I make that decision tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day.
So how do you determine so you do that, you forgive, give it to the Lord, you're dealing with your feelings seem to have come in line, but then something happens and it comes back up and instantly those feelings are there.
Right. Well, then you make the same choice again on a personal level. Again, we're not even talking yet about the other.
But does that mean you haven't forgiven, or is it just
no?
Or is it just the hurt of the situation?
Yeah, it doesn't mean you haven't forgiven. It means that you need to continue forgiving.
Right.
And there definitely is that feeling that Satan loves to say, well, you still have pain over this, so therefore...
Because there's some things that have happened in our past that when we talk about them, or whenever I see that person, or, whatever it is, those hurt feelings come up, and it's like, I have to evaluate, all right, is this just a hurt feeling, or is this really, have I chosen to not forgive again? I have to really analyze that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think in that moment there's anything wrong with saying, Lord, if I haven't forgiven, I choose Christ over this offense. I mean, because I think that you've got to move past the idea that forgiveness in the practical sense, our practice of it is you pray one time and it's done. In the eternal sense, Christ's sacrifice was once for all. But in the practical sense, our choice of Christ's sacrifice is a continual choice. Like we have to make it each day, each time, each offense and so forth.
Part of that, putting your flesh down daily, I die daily. I have to die daily to how I feel about that person, or,
right.
those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the personal. I think that one of the things we've seen in over time, and going back to kind of what the context of this whole discussion is that there are people that just carry that weight and don't deal with it on a personal level and just kind of go, well, I'm moving on. I'm just moving, forward, and I'm just going to try and ignore it. And that's not the same as dealing with it. And
Right.
and you should deal with it. I think Brother Cockrell, when he talked to us about this and asked us to talk about this topic, he mentioned the idea that is it laziness that causes a person to not deal with it? I think it on that level,
Could be.
maybe.
Because it's hard work to deal with it.
maybe. But I don't know that it is laziness so much as it is the hardness of our heart. And we don't like to admit that we get a hard heart sometimes, but we do get a hard heart about, I just don't want to forgive them. I don't want to, move past this. And maybe because sometimes of our misconceptions about forgiveness, that somehow that means that we have to allow them to hurt us again, or that it means that we're saying what they did was okay. And neither of those things are true.
No.
What we're saying when we practice biblical forgiveness is that Christ's sacrifice was sufficient. And there is a distinction between, she was testifying.
Yes.
There was a gnat right there. There's a biblical difference between forgiveness, repentance, and restoration. And restoration is like a coin. One side is forgiveness. That's our part. That was God's part. The other side is repentance. That's their part. That was our part when it comes to salvation. So God chose to forgive before the foundation of the world. And God is at the cross ready to receive us for Christ's sake. But until we come to the cross, then there's not going to be restoration. And so that's one of the things, like there's a doctrine that's out there that they call universal salvation. And there's even Baptists that believe this, that, well, because Christ died for all, then everyone will be saved even if they don't receive Christ. It's like, well, no, because you have to come to the cross. God's waiting for you at the cross.
Well, how? Okay.
There's so many scripture you have to ignore to
Absolutely, but those same people will stay mad at somebody forever and judge them forever. How is it that they themselves, how is it that they don't think God's going to judge sin when they themselves judge sin? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I don't know those people, so I can't say what
I'm just saying in general, like we all do that. We all are like, okay, that person's a bad person. And,
Sure.
Why is it that we think that God won't do that either?
I can't explain how
That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
I'm not going to be an apologist.
It's dumb. It's dumb.
What I do know is it's unbiblical. And I know this, a lot of Christians, a lot of Baptists don't understand forgiveness. I love what he says in numerous places as he talks about forgiveness in the scriptures, as the Lord does. In Matthew, he says in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And that word as there means in the same manner. And I always think if I forgave people like if God forgave me like I forgive others, would I be saved? And that's a powerful thought to me. If you have to ask yourself that question, if God forgave you like you forgive others, and maybe that's why you struggle with understanding God's forgiveness, because you are thinking of God's forgiveness in the same manner that you forgive. And because of that, you feel like you're never quite good enough for God. You're never quite there spiritually. You haven't come to acceptance of how God forgives. You've tried to fit God into your model instead of coming into his. And that's an important transition in our spiritual life as well as our emotional life. So dealing with things on a personal level, you need to deal with it immediately. If God reveals something to you, you need to deal with it right away, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's...
Because the longer you put it off, the harder your heart's going to be about it.
Right. And maybe it's not forgiveness. Maybe it's just obedience to like prayer, Bible reading, church attendance, those type of things, whatever spiritual activity. If God convicts you, you should never put it off. It's not just laziness, it's disobedience.
Delayed obedience is disobedience.
Yes. Yeah. If God says...
That's what we taught our kids.
Yeah. If God says go, go. Now, is there a process in going? If someone surrenders to ministry, does that mean they're supposed to immediately take a church somewhere or jump on a plane and fly to the mission field? Well, they need to follow the process of going, and that's going to be in large part given direction through their pastor and through their local church, because God gave the commission of the gospel to the local New Testament church. And so he's going to work through the leadership of that church and so forth. And so anyway, that's, being in the process of going is obedience. You're not disobedient because you're not there yet, as long as you're in the process of going there,
Right.
right? Unless you're purposely slow walking it yourself. Putting it off is certainly not just lazy, it's sinful in that regard. All right, so that's on the personal level.
Yes.
All right, now on the public level. So I've got this person over here that is doing wrong. They're causing problem. They're antagonistic toward me or toward, dealing. When do I deal with those things? And how do I deal with those things? Well, they're in that vein. There's two different sides to it. Is it a personal attack, or is it an attack on the ministry itself? And I think Moses is the example for that. Moses was meek when he was attacked personally, meaning he didn't take offense. And that taking offense is a choice, even in our daily life.
Yes. It is.
Yesterday, we got done teaching, and I don't know what it was.
I don't know either. You haven't been that way in a long time.
I was just cranky, I was just like, I was trying not to be cranky. You have those moments where you're like, I'm just
I
cranky.
typically am that way, but you're
I
not.
don't know why I'm cranky that I am. But, in the distant past,
Well, it would have turned into a huge
it
fight.
would have been a fight.
Yeah.
But Angela was meek.
I don't know if I was meek. I
Well,
just
you
I just
were.
knew not to push a button.
Well, no, but that's the point. You didn't take offense.
Oh, because I
And-
knew you weren't feeling good.
And that's the response there. Like, well, should she have responded? See, that's the thing. That's when
you
we,
were pretty snippy. Still.
and that's when we want to, that's the thing. Inwardly, if we're someone snippy toward us, we want to respond. I think there's people that are watching this that are surprised that I would ever.
I was surprised.
Whatever. We've been married 31 years. It happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. Thankfully, it doesn't happen. It used to happen a lot, but it doesn't
Yeah,
anymore.
no, it doesn't
but
happen right now.
usually it's when my blood sugars, I had just got done teaching
It's
3
been a long
hours.
week.
And anyway, but because she responded in meekness, meaning she did respond. And I think that's important.
I did.
She did respond, but not in a
Not in kind.
not in kind. Yes, there you go. Her response was to be kind to me, to point out, hey, I think you're maybe not, your blood sugar may be a little low, or maybe a little hangry right now. And I accepted that. I didn't get upset.
You didn't get upset at all. No. And we were trying to talk about certain topics, and so we just, because of the edginess, we weren't gelling. So
Right.
we set those topics to the side. And we did not talk about them.
But
yeah.
sometimes we think, well, not telling them, not responding in kind is not responding, and that's not true.
Right. Yeah.
On a personal level, responding with meekness is a biblical response. I'm not going to take offense. I'm not going to retaliate to that behavior.
Right. And it's okay. I'll just throw this out there. For me, it's easier to do with someone that I really love.
Oh, she loves me.
But it's
She really loves me.
but it's harder to do when it is towards someone that I don't necessarily love a lot.
Well, right. That has
So
to do
it's
with,
harder.
but that has to do with our personal love, and that's when we have to walk in God's love, not our
Yes,
love,
yes.
right? And that's when we struggle with that. It should indicate to us, I'm not walking in the Spirit right now because the fruit of the Spirit's not being manifested in me.
Right.
And I'm having a desire to walk in the flesh. And that's when we ought not respond.
What?
I know. It's the opposite of how we feel, really.
Really, because I myself struggle with, all right, how do I know? Because just in myself, sometimes I want to respond immediately. I want to, lob the head off or drive the stake through the head like jail, or, sometimes I want to do that
You're
immediately.
a biblical woman. That's very biblical of you.
But sometimes that's not what's supposed to happen. And so I struggle with, all right, do I deal with this head on directly right now, like I want to, or do I give it some space and let it see what God does with it before?
Yeah, and I think that's where often we should be cautious of how we feel, how we want to respond.
Yes.
Because the immediate want is often in the flesh.
Yes.
And if it's a personal attack, Jesus was clear about this, turn the other cheek. On a personal level, if they take your coat, give them your cloak. Don't respond in kind. Allow yourself to be defrauded even. The Bible specifically says that. Count it as an opportunity to identify with Christ in his suffering and accept that and commit it, as Peter says, commit it to him that judgeth righteously.
Right.
Whether that's in our personal relationship, whether that's in any interpersonal relationship, and the attack is personal. That's when I should not respond with the flesh. I should respond, but I should respond in kindness. I should respond in tenderheartedness. I should respond in forgiveness. I should respond in love.
Yeah.
That is a response, and it's the right response.
Right. True.
But then there's sometimes that the offender is intent on personal harm. Do I have to continue in a scenario where someone's trying to harm me directly in that sense? I get that the turn the other cheek. That's my personal internal response, and even my response to them, I'm not taking offense. But if someone hits me a couple times, I don't have to stand in arm's length either.
True.
I can back up. And that's not an unbiblical response. I don't have to do it in bitterness and hatred. I can back up a bit for, just get out of the way. It's kind of like, in my mind, it's like, okay, with an angry man, thou shalt not go. Right? Mm-hmm. It's better to dwell in the corner of a rooftop than in a white house with a brawling woman, right? It goes both ways, men and women. The Bible talks about it that way. What is he saying? He's saying, all right, if someone's attacking you, this is biblical, turn the other cheek. If they continue to attack, get a ladder out and climb on the roof. I don't have to worry about that because I have a ladder right here attached to the back.
Yes, that apparently the birds and the squirrels like today.
Because Angela has a hip and knee replacement, she probably can't come up.
What? You don't think I can do it? Wow. Okay, I'm going to choose not to be offended at you.
That seemed like a choice right there. Anyway, the bad part is she's that far from the ground up there, and she's a pretty good shot. So anyway, but the point of that is it's okay to withdraw yourself too. Maybe not the first offense. Maybe the first offense there, you go, I'm not going to respond in meekness. But if shots continue coming your way, you step back.
Yeah.
You don't allow bitterness and anger in your heart. You don't, but you step back. So there's two responses, right? There's the immediate, not taking offense. And then there's the maybe longer frame of, hey, I'm going to wait over here till you get right, and when you're right, when you come to the cross, then we'll be back together again.
Right.
Right. So there's two things there. Now, that's different, though, than when the work of God is attacked. I think a lot of people struggle with this idea between turn the other cheek and the government bearing the sword, or turn the other cheek and the church exercising discipline. Because we correlate the ideas personal to institutional as the same, but they're not the same. The church has a responsibility to exercise biblical discipline regarding membership. The government has a responsibility to exercise criminal discipline. Why? Because in both instances, the issue is the protection of the governed. Is the church protecting the membership if there is an allowance of someone to attack the body through trying to draw people into sin, trying to draw people away from the truth of the doctrines of the Word of God? Do we at that point go, well, we're just practicing, turning the other cheek here while they're actively trying to hinder the body? Or if someone's out there robbing banks, or someone's out there raping people and murdering people, the government go, well, we're just, we're supposed to turn the other cheek and that. Well, that's not the role of the institution of the church or of the institution of the government. And so there's a distinction even. Okay, so as a pastor, for 25 years as a pastor, I had to turn the other cheek on a personal level when people attacked me. That's not because I was a pastor, that's because I'm a Christian. But at the same time, I had to weigh, is this an attack on Rick personally, or is this attack on the church, of which I am the required overseer here on this earth, who has to take that institutional response seriously, even while I exercise meekness in my personal life. And that's difficult.
That is very hard.
And I think lots of people struggle with that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know what it's like from a pastoral perspective, but you experienced that from a pastor's wife perspective, which is probably, it's different in many ways. And I think, too...
Yes, because I don't like seeing them attack the church. I love our church. I love our church people. So there's that aspect of it. But then I don't like to see them attack you because I am first your wife. and then the pastor's wife. So
And you're first my wife and my first.
well, I'm glad about that. Yeah. So yeah, so it does like instantly makes me not very happy, to
Right.
put it nicely.
Okay, so but therein also is a distinction. Sometimes we tell others don't defend us because I'm being meek. But others defending us, I can be meek and someone else can defend me.
Right.
That's not the same. God doesn't say if you see someone being abused, turn your cheek. That's not what he says.
It's not what we taught our children either.
He says if you're being abused, turn the other cheek, remove yourself from the circumstance if necessary. But if I see someone offending, I have a Christian obligation to admonish the brethren to righteousness, to do right. Even if I'm not a pastor, I have that obligation. I have an obligation to, as a Christian, to look at my fellow believers, my brothers and sisters, and if two of them are at odds and one of them is the offender, I don't treat them both as offenders.
Right.
I admonish one, you need to keep a meek spirit. I see you're being attacked. I see you're being offended, but make sure you don't allow it to turn into bitterness. But the other one, I don't say, listen, I know that, you need to not be offended. I say, hey, you need to quit offending.
Yeah.
I'm to judge righteous judgment. So even individually, when I see injustice, I'm not to sit back and ignore it. I am to step forward, but we don't want to do that. So go from the I want to defend myself to I don't want to step up when others are offended.
Right. And that's hard because, just thinking back to a particular situation when it seemed like so many were against the church and against you, and seemingly not having anyone step up and say, I remember particularly.
There were
Yes,
people.
but I remember particularly there was a pastor that we had been counseling with about the situation. And when we counseled with him personally, he was like, for us, yes, you're in the right. But then whenever it came out that to the church, when he addressed the church, he was very weak in his response. And I remember how much that hurt because he didn't step up when in private he was, but then in public he didn't.
Right.
So, so even that difference of everybody wants to respond strong in private, but when it comes to dealing with things publicly, they don't want to.
Well, and I think that's the natural tendency. And that's the whole point. Our natural tendency is to want to do something on a personal level, but not on a public level.
Sure.
And it's in reality on the personal level where we ought not be responding if it's an attack on us. But on a public level where we don't want to respond, we ought to respond.
We ought to, yeah. And
but we ought to respond with grace and love.
Sure.
And righteous judgment.
Sure. I agree with all of that. But still, you step up and you.
You do. But sometimes it's seeing that not happen that helps us to see the reason it matters so much.
It got to be that way.
Yeah. I think that a good rule of thumb is when I don't want to do something I should, and when I want to do something I probably shouldn't.
That's true.
Just do the opposite of whatever you feel.
That's pretty much what if I want to just, lob their head off, shouldn't.
Right. And when should I? I shouldn't jump on every perceived thing. I should give a breath to evaluate. Is this a real situation?
Right. Is this a real offense or did I just get my feelings hurt?
Well, and even when I'm looking at others, did they just get their feelings hurt or is this a real wrong,
Yes.
And so taking a step back and doing an evaluation on that is an important part. And as just a friend, we have a tendency to want to just jump in on our friend's side and not judge righteous judgment, or jump in on our children's side and not judge righteous judgment.
Yes, and both of those are hard for me.
Or our spouse. And I think that we ought to defend our spouse, and we ought to defend our children, and we ought to defer to them in the question. We ought to not automatically be against them. We ought to be on their side, and yet honest enough to tell them if indeed they are wrong on this.
Sure.
Like, I'm on your side, but you're not right about this. I'm 1,000% for you, but in this area, you're not right.
Yes, and I do that with
the wounds of a friend are faithful.
Yes,
that's what the Bible says. The wounds of a friend are faithful, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful.
Yeah,
it's the person that always tells you you're right is not your friend.
No, that always go along with you. That always agrees with everything. Yeah, that's typically not a good friend.
No, I mean sometimes people think, well, my wife and I don't agree about everything, so is she really on my side? It's like, well, if someone agrees with you about everything, they probably have an angle they're trying to get.
Yeah.
Something, you're going to disagree with people, and it's okay. Disagree with people agreeably,
Sure.
kindly.
And that's what we did yesterday.
That's what you did yesterday.
Yeah. I stepped to the table and said, okay, we're going to have to agree that we don't agree right now. And we sat down and had a wonderful day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And she says, we say that as if it were a long period of time. It really
No, it
was
wasn't.
on the way to lunch.
After lunch, once the blood sugar came back up, everything was fine.
Everything was fine. And we had coffee, and so life was good.
Oh, yeah, I had this peanut butter white mocha blender thing. Oh, my goodness.
I did not.
Yeah, I shouldn't have.
Can't have peanuts.
It was so good. Anyway, so life was better. The moral of that story was,
Anyway.
life was better.
The moral is Angela didn't have to try and crawl on the trailer because I calmed down.
That too.
When should I intervene? When should I take a step?
I grabbed that first rung.
Right. When should I step up and deal with something that I don't necessarily want to deal with? Well, it has to be guided by walking with the Lord.
Yeah.
It has to be guided by knowing and having a full understanding of what's really going on, and it not just being me rushing to judgment, but it also has to be in a timely enough manner that my intervention matters to that situation too. I mean,
I know I struggle with that. I know that that's a thing that I struggle with. So with the church, I always ran things by you first. Like, okay, all right, this is what happened. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I want to do. Is that the right thing to do?
And a lot of the time, my answer was, when you pray about this more. As a pastor, I would see issues or problems, and I would tell Angela, I see a thing here. I could go force the issue, but it might create more of a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask God to give an open door to deal with the issue. I never prayed for God to give me an open door to deal with something, and he didn't do that. And often within a short period of time. But if I go and jump into the problem and I have not prayed about it first, if I have not spent time with the Lord, and I'm not talking about thinking about it, I'm talking about praying about it, asking God, give me understanding, give me insight, and then give me the wisdom to know when you've opened the door to deal with it, and open the door as soon as it's time, Lord. Now I'm observing, I'm watching. I can't tell you how many times people came to me and I didn't have to go to them.
And also, I think a lot of times we see these things, it's kind of like an iceberg. We see what's sticking out, what's obvious, but we don't see everything underneath the issue. And so waiting, seeking the Lord in prayer, he reveals more of it to us.
That's true.
Then we have more of an understanding of what's going on and clarity, and then the Lord guides us on how to deal with it.
Absolutely. So I think that this is such a nuanced topic, because is it personal? Is it internal? Is it external? And if it's both, how do I deal with it internally? How do I deal with it externally? How do I deal with it if it's a personal, external personal conflict versus a institutional conflict? Or if as a believer, I see two believers that, and also I always said this to our kids, and I think that this is a key factor. Is it my business?
Yeah, don't grab the dog by the ears.
Right. That's what we told our kids non-stop.
We quoted that verse all the
Non-stop.
time.
You're grabbing a dog by the ears. It's not your business. You're going to get bit. That's the thing. You grab a dog by the ears, you're going to get bit. It's not your business. It's not your thing to deal with. What can you do? Well, you can pray, Lord, if you want me to do something about this, cause them to come to me and make it my business.
Right.
But don't just assume everything's your business.
Yeah.
Don't be in modern vernacular. And if your name is Karen, I'm not trying to direct this at you, but it's the modern vernacular. Don't be a Karen.
Yeah.
Don't be a busybody. Don't be looking at opportunities to tell everyone what you think, because what you think doesn't matter. What God thinks does.
Right.
So you've got to weigh that. Is it even your business? And if it is your business, ask God to give you that open door instead of just rushing headlong into it.
Yeah.
It's God to.
You always think about your Proverbs pendulum, the haste, when you deal with things in haste, the progression that it leads to.
Haste is a very serious issue in the scriptures, in Proverbs in particular.
And we all like to be hasty in our judgment, but that's not good.
Right. Absolutely. Anyway, my voice is a little better even after teaching. I think I preached twice Sunday, and then 4 times. Well, I taught 3 hours each morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then preached each evening. But my voice has continued to get better, thankfully.
Yeah,
So
a little bit stronger every day.
we've got 3 days off here now and let my voice recover a bit. Our next direction is Wyoming.
Pray for no wind.
And we're going to Douglas, Wyoming.
Not only do we have to worry about bridges, but now we have to worry about wind.
Going through Wyoming and that area, that's the issue. That is the issue. So, yeah, we appreciate it. It was windy when we went through Kansas, but the wind was a direct wind, not a crosswind. As long as it's not a crosswind, we're okay. But, yeah, that is a major factor. Direct wind hurts the gas mileage,
Yeah, greatly.
but it doesn't make us unstable.
So pray for us.
Pray for me. Anyway, all right. Well, hopefully this was a help to you. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us at
cartersforhope@gmail.com.
hope@gmail.com.
Or message me on Messenger or Instagram or text me.
There you go.
We'll take topics.
Absolutely. All right. God bless. Have a great week.